Rotarians in the room, please turn your cell phone ringers on, because if we hear your ringer go off, everybody should stand up and point toward the ringer. You are now eligible, if you're being pointed at, to give a $50 donation to the Rotary Club of Foster City Foundation. Keep those phones on. All right, do we have any visiting Rotarians today? And Gary Cow is going to join us, but it's not. He's asking me about Zoom setup this morning. Any guests of the club? No guests of the club. All right. So let me announce some birthdays. Melanie Maxwell's husband Joe, birthday on April 4th. And anniversary, Gil and Audrey Barron on April 3rd, 40 years. So congratulate Gil, if he's here, see him. And we have a Rotary anniversary, Larry Kavanoki, today, April 6th, 17 years. Where's Larry? He just, okay, congratulate him when he comes back. All right, Stephanie, did you have a sunshine? I have a sunshine report. Ron Jin, past district governor Ron Jin, suffered a major stroke last week. So he, I think, had some, he's having trouble walking right now. He is in good spirits. I'm going to share a picture. He's in rehab right now. And this was sent to me by past district governor Mary Bates. So he's going to be in rehab, acute rehab, I think for 2 weeks, and then he's going to go home. And his partner, Liz Marks, is a retired nurse, I believe. So he's in good hands. But we have a couple cards that we want to sign back at the table. But just sign one or the other. We just need a little more real estate for everybody to sign. So feel free to do that throughout the meeting or at the end of the meeting. And just well wishes to Ron. You want to say something? Who hasn't signed, raise your hand, and John will bring the card to you. You don't have a sunshine report? Okay, come on. No other sunshine report? I haven't signed it.
Regarding the sunshine report, I think you all know Phyllis Brown, had a hip replacement. So we all wish her well. And I sent a card already, but I know this is a card also for everyone that's also Samaritan House volunteers. So on May the 2nd, I need a volunteer from 3:30 until around 5. Do I have any volunteers? And that would be on May 2nd, Monday, May 2nd. Any volunteers? Hands risen? I don't see any. Anybody here? Okay, what about June 6th? Monday. Okay. I'll get you here. Thank you.
Okay, let's go around for good news. Anybody has good news to share? Larry?
On Monday evening. The Burlingame Council had their regular session. It happened to be a Zoom session. And they took a vote. And the first vote came out, a couple names came out, and then Sean Lowenthal, my son, came out. Well, he received enough votes, and now he's a planning commissioner for the city of Burlingame.
Oh, wow. Congratulations. Any other good news to share? No other good news? Okay. All right. Stan. Coming over.
I just want to see Jack run.
Oh, yeah. Good luck.
My good news is past President Maria Pond, who has been gone since December 26th, helping out her daughter's family, is coming back home tomorrow night. That's good news for me.
Okay, any other good news? Okay, just a few, just a
Wait,
few
wait. I
announcements.
think Zoom person.
Who has good news?
Rel was waving his hand.
Rel, you have good news?
Yeah, good news is I'm at this meeting. Last night I got in late and the opening gate for my parking was malfunctioning, so I couldn't park underground. So I back out, try to park in our parking. It was completely full. So I dutifully parked across the street in an area where it was completely clean, no signs, nothing. And then this morning I go out to get my car, it's towed away because they're blacktopping the street. So good news, bad news. I'm glad to be here. I wish I were there physically.
Ooh, that doesn't sound like good news. So what's the status of the car?
Well, it was towed away, so I guess I have to find out from the city where my car is.
All right, good luck with that, Rel. All right, last week we had a taco day. Hopefully you enjoyed that. The cost of the meal was lower than we normally had, so we deferred about $200 to donate to Shelter Box, and along with some other directed donations, including Mary Bates, who had a car donation. She put all of those proceeds toward Shelter Box. We totaled with other club members and the club foundation funds $8,555 that we're going to write a check to Shelter Box for Ukraine relief efforts. And Jim Carrier is going to be, just so happens, going to be at the district day of service Shelter Box. Okay, so I said, okay, we're just going to do something to get there. So thanks for your attendance on that. Diana Shorter, do you want to talk about, yeah, district assembly attendance? I think you wanted.
It was senior meal attendance with Patricia. Patricia will be kind of speaker. She can't make it today, but she wanted to thank everybody that helped with senior meals yesterday. Marcia, Phyllis Harrison, Phyllis Brown, Debbie, Gary, she worked hard. Debbie Williams, of course. We did really well. It was Big Shaw, and everybody liked it. And next month should be the tacos, we're hoping. And may actually try Curtis's taco truck and see what Patricia says. And then the other thing is for me, for those of you that attended the district assembly, I've got the volunteers. I just need to know who attended actually, possibly. Yeah, okay, I'll come around before you guys leave and I'll get the names. That's it. Thank you.
I think we had about 30 or 40 people at senior year, is that right? 33, I think.
30, yeah, it was 30. Showed up.
Showing.
It was 42, but we're not quite sure what happened, but 33 was good.
All right, I'm going to invite Linda to come up and just give a little update on Second Harvest.
Hi, everybody. Last Friday, we had our first of the month, Second Harvest Food Bank, as we continue to do. Excuse me. But what was different last time is that we had all the volunteers that normally come out of the Foster City Village Rotary and the PJCC have a day off. And Gilead had a group of people that came over. Even better, a group of younger people. 14 of them came, worked really hard. I think had a really good time. Even brought donuts and bagels and things like that. But it was a wonderful group of people, highly educated people, I might add. And we had a really good time, and they appreciated it. Thank you, Diana, for getting that posted. And I think it's already been on Facebook, their picture.
I put it on LinkedIn with her.
Thank you. And so, and I need to send that to her, but I can do that because it's on my phone. Okay. But it was a very great group. We continue, I just sent out a thing, asking you for volunteers for the next 3 or 4 months. Please volunteer. I have to fill my slot.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
I wouldn't volunteer, I cannot, so if I can do anything else, I'd be
Right,
happy.
we, and I appreciate that, and you can come and observe. Typically, we have enough people to do the bagging and the things that aren't required to lift the boxes. And I do realize that many of us can't lift those boxes. You might be able to lift the 20-pound box from here to there, but you have to do it for 2 hours. And loading it in a car. So, you know, even if you are involved in other parts of the club, if you could give us a couple of hours, once every few months, so I can fill my slots for Second Harvest Food Bank, it would really be appreciated. I know some of you are on standby and that kind of thing, and I appreciate it. It is a bit of hard work, but it's very rewarding. We're looking at 220 people twice a month. And we'll have to stop. So thank you.
I must say the Gilead people were really efficient too. You know, I think Linda showed them what to do once, they're off and running. Just a little aside, a gentleman walked up to me on Friday, he just walked in to take a walk. And he asked me what this event was, and I told him that we were distributing food for people who can't afford groceries. And he said, "Oh, God bless you." He said, "Can I make a donation?" So he gave me a $2. I just deposited it into the foundation. So it's kind of nice to see that. All right, citizens.
So one last reminder, day of service is this Saturday, April 9th, starts at 8:30 to sign in, and welcome is at 8:50, and the event actually begins, the hands-on projects begin at 9. If you haven't registered, it's actually not too late, because we raise so much money that we can pay for lunch for anybody that does register, but you have to register by tomorrow. So if you haven't registered and you still want to come, great. Now, let's say you missed the deadline, it doesn't even matter, just come, because it's gonna be a great day. We're gonna have a lot of fun. With a great exhibit. And we have prizes, and we have evening fair. So it's at Coyote Point, starts at 9, and hopefully you will be there. Oh, and I want to thank the cooking crew, they're doing great. I also want to thank the club for its sponsorship, and I want to thank Mark Watson for helping to sponsor this, because with the sponsorships, that's how we're able to afford lunch and t-shirts and no registration fees.
You'll have questions.
Questions or questions? I think you might have included directions.
Everyone that registered got an email this morning that includes a map and all the information. If you still can't, after you look at that, if you can't figure it out, let me know.
And I think parking is free up until a certain time.
Yep.
Sorry, I didn't go back.
As long as you are there by 9:30, then when you come through the interstate, you do not have to pay. Then anyone coming before 9:30 can come in at no charge. So just get there early. If you are an exhibitor or a cooking crew person, your name will be on the special list, and you just give them your name and you say, "Hi, I'm on the special list for exhibitors and cooking crew," and then you can still come in at no charge.
What time are we supposed to be?
Bill or Ollie, you know what time the cooking crew is supposed to be there?
9 o'clock.
9
I think
o'clock.
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock for the cooking crew. Yeah, that's right, 9 o'clock for the cooking crew. Okay, thank you guys.
Any follow-up questions for Cindy? All right, Steve, you wanted to? Sister City News?
Thanks, President Curtis. Well, today I have two things I'm really excited about. The first, as you can see from the jersey, Giants baseball season starts Friday. So, go Giants. The other thing that I'm really excited about is although our trip to Japan is going to be for 6 months, things are really heating up right now. We have a really good itinerary plan. I talked to a couple of veteran travelers who go to Japan quite often, and I told them that for less than $4,000 double occupancy, this is a round trip on ANA with all the hotels, 2 banquets, all breakfasts, all buses, everything is included. And no one, he couldn't believe that it's less than 4,000. So we only have space for 30. So if you are interested, I'm going to be here after the meeting to answer any specific questions. But I would not wait, even though it's 6 months, because we've got a lot of people who are interested. I've only started talking to our Rotary Club and to the city officials. So we have a couple of city council members. Kevin Miller will be going also. But there are people outside of our group that are interested. And of course, I want to make sure we get to 30 so that we get that really low cost. We had one concern about the COVID and the Japanese government not opening it to foreign visitors. We expect 2 things. Number one is by October, things will have eased enough that they'll be letting in all the foreign visitors. But our travel agent is talking to the government of Japan because they are letting in business and students of 5,000 a day. And we're telling the government that this is actually a business trip because we are going to Inagi City on a official business trip. So they feel very comfortable that we will be able to go regardless of whether foreign visitors are available or not. So we can plan on it. I have an application that we need you to send in right away. The $250 deposit, fully refundable if you decide not to go, but you need to get it in to guarantee your space because, like I said, people are really clamoring to go. Mr. Mosini, did you have a question?
You answered it. It was October.
Cindy.
What were the dates in October?
The dates we leave here October 19th. And then we'll return on Thursday, or Saturday, October 28th. So it's really a very compact trip. We're only going to 3 cities, including, not including Inagi. Inagi is going to be fabulous because we are going to be visitors on a sister city delegation. And for those of you who have been to Japan, understand the welcoming that you get from them. You will be treated like royalty. It's going to be just exciting as that. Larry,
Excuse me, do you have an itinerary?
I have my itinerary right here.
Do you have one to
So if you meet me after the meeting, we'll go over all that. Okay. So even if you may not go, but just are interested, please see me after the meeting. Okay. And those on Zoom, let me know if you're interested, because I will get that information to you as well. Are there any other questions? Thanks, Chris.
Okay, I think we have a vocational talk today. Jill, would you join me up here? Ready? Or should I stall? Okay.
Hi, everyone. I thank you for the opportunity, Curtis and Patricia, for asking me to share today a little bit about my career and my vocation. So I'll try to be brief, so cut me off if I overstep my bounds.
plenty of time.
Okay, great. Last summer, I retired from the software industry after a 38-year career. And I retired as a director of Global System Integrator Partnership or Global Strategic Alliances.
quick question. How many of you are familiar with what a strategic alliance professional does? Great, nobody. I'm actually going to share with you how my profession transformed over the years. So I actually began my career at IBM, straight out of college. I actually interned for them out here for 6 months and then was invited back to join them permanently after I graduated my senior year of college. I graduated from Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's a private engineering school, okay? And so that's how I got the opportunity in the first place to come out to California, which was not a dream of mine. So I came out and I ended up working for IBM for about 7 years. And during that time, I was a systems DBA analyst and a pre-sales technical engineer. So that was more on the technical side. But after I left IBM, I wanted to move more into the sales and business side of the organizations. And what I discovered was that I had this knack for building partnerships and collaboration with other companies for mutual benefit between the organizations that I worked for. And so I began my journey to develop business partnerships. Over the course of my career, I've actually gone public with 3 different startups. The one that I think that was the most successful was a company called Business Objects. And Business Objects grew to about $1 billion in size, and then they got purchased by SAP. The other half of my career was spent in global organizations. I worked for Microsoft for a little over 6 years, Verizon, Hyperion, and Red Hat, which actually got consumed or acquired by IBM. So what does a strategic alliance professional actually do? Well, it has really morphed over the years. When I started out, it was very immature and undefined, really. And so it was a position where you had to know or understand the business, but you were really there to drive joint sales. And so it was a very social type, I would say, of role where you had to really get in there and bond with different types of people in an organization. But it was very hard for an organization to measure it. So over the years, it transformed where the alliance professional now delivers a joint, long-term, multifunctional business relationship with an organization for the mutual benefit of joint goals. Those goals can be a variety of strategic entities. Obviously, 2 organizations want to be able to drive incremental revenue. That's primarily the purpose of a strategic alliance manager. But there's other reasons for joining a partnership, and that could be market awareness, market expansion, moving into new verticals like, say, the healthcare industry or oil and gas. It could be moving the partnership and visibility of the organization into new markets, geo markets like Asia Pacific or Europe, Latin America. So depending on the size of company I worked for, my goals were different. If I was in the startup environment, like I was basically with my last role, I was there to develop a new partnership with global system integrators. Now there's 3 types of partnerships. There's value-added resellers, there's ISVs or independent software vendors. They're typically called technology partners, and they're global system integrators, which are your large consulting organizations that drive billions of dollars. So in my last role, I came in and I developed a new partnership for the company from scratch. And it was a bit of a challenge for me because it was a company that I had no relationship with. So I really had to start from scratch, identifying the strategy, the vision, that I had to identify people within the organization that I had to target, especially at the executive level. And through that, I started the process of developing a partnership. The types of things that a strategic alliance professional will do is everything from working on developing contracts and managing the contract negotiation process to delivering on go-to-market and business planning goals, centered around primarily sales sales and marketing and co-marketing with the partnership. And then we also touch base quite often with professional services and training organizations. So that's really across the board. So over the years, when I was at Microsoft, I actually initiated some innovative type of programs for them with their partners, and I was recognized 4 years in a row for outstanding contributions by either my business partners or by the corporation. And finally, towards the end of my career, I actually recently won Transformation Leader of the Year for working with global system integrators by the 13th annual Worldwide Women's Awards Program. So at any rate, there's a lot to the profession. It's a good profession for college students and folks that want to go into software or into any kind of high-tech company, but don't really want to maybe be a direct salesperson or a highly technical person. So you have to have a cross combination skill set. So anyway, if you're interested in learning more about it, I'm happy to help you out.
Thank you, Jill. Should anybody have questions for Jill? All right, we are going to pause maybe for 2 or 3 minutes while I set up our speaker, and then we'll reconvene. So maybe 3 or 4 minutes of fellowship.
Wait, you will get yours.
I can come up with video on the play. Let's reconvene. I'm going to invite John Grant, District Governor, to introduce our speaker today.
People couldn't be here today, so I'm going to talk to you for 45 minutes. Actually, our speaker was scheduled today and found out that she got COVID. So we canceled. And luckily, we had a video from Rick King, which we're going to show. For those new people in the club, Rick King was president of Rotary International in 2000, 2001. 2001, 2002. You know, in the early 2000s. And Rick has always been a great friend of our club. Rick spoke to us many times before he was president, while he was president, and actually traveled with us when we went down to Mazatlan one time to distribute wheelchairs and visit schools down there. And I was very fortunate to be on Rick's advisory committee while he was president. And he was very, very helpful to us. He and Frank Devlin really introduced the Wheelchair Foundation programs to Rotary International and supported them very, very, very much to get a great start as we started into there. Frank Devlin, we started the first year when Frank came to me and told me to write matching grants for the Wheelchair Foundation through the Rotary Foundation. So I took that as Frank saying to me, write matching grants for the Wheelchair Foundation, for the Rotary Foundation. So I actually wrote 18 of them. And the staff at Rotary International went crazy and said, what are you doing? You can only write 4 grants for outside organizations. And that's where we started, back and forth. Rick did support it, letting the Wheelchair Foundation become a strategic alliance with Rotary so we could put the Rotary wheel on the wheelchairs. That lasted about a year until a new president came in and said, you can't do that either. And so we moved on from there. Rick was a great supporter. At the International Convention in Barcelona, Rick King had us present the wheelchairs on stage at the International Convention. Dan Pond was there pushing the wheelchair up on stage, Linda and I. One of the staff from the Wheelchair Foundation, Chris Lewis, who is Jerry Lewis's son, was there helping us do that. Chris's relationship with Rick and the Wheelchair Foundation got Jerry Lewis to be the entertainment at the closing session for that meeting. There was tremendous attendance at the wheelchair presentation because the next speaker during that day was Mikhail Gorbachev. And so the place was packed. And they got to see that we had presented wheelchairs at that time to 40 countries, around 20,000 wheelchairs, I think, at the very, very beginning program with Rick. We went on to present over 300,000 or 400,000 through Rotary wheelchairs to people in 100 countries. But Rick was a great, great supporter of that and a great help in us doing that. So Rick also was an entertainer in Las Vegas. And many of his speeches start out with him talking about his speech, his singing in Las Vegas. And I believe this video kind of goes more to that than it does to Rotary. This video was made during COVID for Rick by his club to present to other clubs about Rick King. And instead of a Rotary program, I believe it's Rick talking a lot about his experiences in Las Vegas. So I'm very happy to present International President Rick King.
I've known Board a long, long time, and it's a pleasure to be with him. And so many of you that have been past president of this club, it's good to see you again. I was thinking on the way over that every president of Rotary International has a theme. This year, my friend Robbie from Colombo, Sri Lanka, has a theme, being a gift to the world. Next year's theme is serving Rotary serving humanity. My friend John Jern from Tennessee. And I took my theme from Charles Dickens' immortal classic, A Christmas Carol, mankind is our business. Now the people who create Rotary merchandise love these annual changes of themes. Because we put the themes on t-shirts, hats, pins, socks, underwear, Sherry and I have my Rotary theme in a rotary wheel in the ceiling above the bed where we sleep every night. And it lights up every 2 or 3 hours and sings my theme song. A song of Rotary, we're in the business of mankind. And then, of course, it lights up. We sleep with an Alaskan Malamute, and he goes wow in tune with the song, then climbs under the bed and starts chewing on boxes. And in these boxes are Rotary neckties, because every president of Rotary International creates a Rotary necktie. And I wanted to, with this theme on it, and I wanted a tie that was a very fine woven silk, created in Como, Italy. I had a friend on the board of directors of Rotary who had a friend who was also a Rotarian, who owned a big factory in Como, Italy, where they create fine woven silks for men and women. And I wanted a woven tie that would keep a nice knot. And when these ties arrived in Evanston, our world headquarters north of Chicago, I took the tie to another friend of mine, a Rotarian, who's a buyer for Neiman Marcus on North Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And I said, what do you think? And he looked at that tie and he said, Rick, this is a fine woven silk tie. We would sell that tie for $150. So I gave these ties out to heads of state all over the world. We visited 43 heads of state, 28 of whom were very active in their own Rotary clubs. So he gave one to the Prime Minister of France, the Prime Minister of England, the President of Bulgaria. I gave one to President Chen of Taiwan, who'd been in Rotary about a dozen years. He was so excited to receive this tie, I'm not kidding you, that he made me out a check for $5 million US, which I thought was a fair exchange. Fred, I was kind of hoping it was the speaker's fee. But of course it turned out to be a contribution from the government of Taiwan to our polio eradication campaign. I gave one of these ties to Pope John Paul II. I never saw him wear it, but I know he had one. When I was done, I had a whole bunch of these left over, and they shipped them out in a moving van to our home in Silicon Valley, in Fremont. And they're in cardboard boxes underneath the beds where we sleep now in Springtown, here in Livermore. And Sherry says every time I go to speak to a Rotary Club, she says, can't you get rid of another one? Can't you present another one of these sacred ties? So I want to give one of these ties to Fred, President-elect of this club, for inviting me to speak with you today.
Stay up there, Fred. Fred.
Oh, again? Oh, smile?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do like this. Here we go.
It's always nice to be invited back where you've spoken before. I was in Nairobi, Kenya, not long ago, my third trip to Kenya in Rotary work. I was speaking in the Nairobi Hilton Ballroom on a Saturday night to about 1,000 people who had gathered to address a conference dealing with Rotary's efforts in fighting AIDS in sub-Saharan Africa. About 1,000 people were crammed into this ballroom. The fire marshal over there had either been bribed or had no idea what the limit was. And most of these people were from sub-Saharan countries, United Nations officials, and Rotary governors and club presidents and Rotarians from all of these countries in Africa, dealing with the subject of Rotary's work in preventing AIDS. When I finished my speech on this particular Saturday night, a bunch of people were lined up willing to shake my hand. And I saw a 10-year-old boy patiently waiting in line, about 20 minutes, dressed in a dark suit, a nice shirt and a tie, waiting patiently to shake my hand, tell me he liked the speech. This kid came, stood right in front of the podium, held out his hand with a lot of self-esteem, looked me in the eyes and he said, Mr. King, that's the worst speech I ever heard in my life. And I was a little taken back by that, Gabriella. What the heck, he's only 10, what does he know? A few others grabbed my hand, told me they liked the speech. I saw this kid standing in line a second time. And I thought, all right, his mother's made him come back to tell me he's sorry for what he said. Finally gets right in front of me, and he holds out his hand with a lot of self-esteem. says to me, I want to make sure you heard me the first time. That's the worst speech I ever heard in my life. And I thought, now I got to chastise this kid, because I know a lot of people think that when I'm through speaking, but you're really not supposed to say it. When they passed this for governor, grabbed my hand and said, President Rick, don't pay any attention to this kid. He didn't even hear your speech. He just likes to go around the room listening to what all the other people are saying, and he likes to pass it on. Gabrielle, I know you're over 10, and I sure enjoyed your remarks. And thank you for your leadership in Interact. Good to have you here. Every Rotarian comes to the club holding a classification, which means a job, a vocation, an occupation, a profession, vocation, something one did with one's work during working years. Or they had that vocation or classification before they retired, one or the other. I'm very proud of the fact that for 51.5 years, I occupied the same classification as our founder, Paul Harris. I was a very quiet, shy, sweet, humble, innocent, lovable trial lawyer, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed suing people. It was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed my work in courtroom. What is your date of birth, madam? July 15th. What year? Every year. How old is your son, the one living with you? Well, he's 38 or 35. I can't really remember which. Well, how long has he lived with you, lady? 45 years. What was the first thing your husband said to you when he woke up that morning? He said, where am I, Kathy? And why did that upset you? My name is Susan. Now, doctor, isn't it true that when a person dies in his sleep, he doesn't know about it until the next morning? I spent all night dreaming up that question because I like to sound very cerebral, intelligent when I'm cross-examining physicians. I like to cross-examine doctors. I sort of feel that I'm getting even for a lot of prostate exams. Do you recall the time, doctor, that you examined the body? Yes, Mr. King, the autopsy started around 8:30 p.m. And Mr. Dennington was dead at the time. No, counsel, he was sitting on the desk wondering what I was doing to him. Well, now, doctor, before you performed the autopsy, did you check for a pulse? No. Did you check for blood pressure? No. Did you check for breathing? No. Well, then it's possible that the guy was alive when you began the autopsy. No. Well, how can you be so sure, doctor? Well, for one thing, his brain was sitting on my desk in a jar. But a good lawyer never stops with a question like that. Doctor, couldn't the patient have been alive anyway? Yes, Mr. King, it's possible that he could have been alive and practicing law somewhere. So it's always a pleasure to be invited back, and I commend you for the service that you're doing. It was enjoyable listening to all of your questions. In my lifetime, I've been to a lot of Rotary clubs in 135 countries, and I've addressed Rotary clubs in every state of the Union, every province in Canada. And this I will be in Kalamazoo, Michigan, Boston, Massachusetts, Texas, Seattle, Washington, all over the place in different occupations and places, talking to Rotary clubs about what they're doing in Rotary work. When I was in Africa, it took me places for Albert Schweitzer work. Albert Schweitzer joined Rotary when he was a relatively young man, and he had been in Rotary 5 years in May 1960 when he wrote an article for Rotary magazine, and he called it The Truly Human Man. And in the May 1960s, Dr. Schweitzer said this, and I give you just a couple of sentences from his opening paragraph. Having occupied myself since my youth with the great problems of civilization and its survival, amidst the events which form this great adventure that we are in this world, I knew that there have to be associations of people aside from political parties, aside from every kind of distinction, solely the ideal of the truly human man, who tries to judge as a truly human man, and who tries to act as a truly human man. And the first time I said to myself, now they are beginning to do what is necessary future. And I've lived with great concern for the future with my friend Albert Einstein, whom I knew for many years. And I know how much he too was waiting for a great movement. And now this movement has come in Rotary, and we shall fight on while remaining profoundly human. The two salient points, I think, are these. First, as I have traveled the globe many, many times over, I have come to the realization that Rotary, in the words of Albert Schweitzer, was correct. Rotary is necessary for the future. I had dinner on the banks of the Nile in Cairo not so long ago with a retired general from the Egyptian army in the Second World War, an old man, a Rotarian. And we were spending the evening having dinner, talking about Rotary's role in peace in the Middle East and the expansion of Rotary clubs in Middle Eastern countries. And he said something very interesting to me. He said, you know, Rick, in your part of the world, when you have a problem to solve, you come together peacefully in the capacity of a Rotary club or a Chamber of Commerce or a church group or a civic group, and you talk about ways to solve a problem. Whether it's a local problem or a global problem, you talk peacefully about ways to solve the problem. In my part of the world, he said, we don't do that. Instead, we kill each other. And then he went on to say, and until we have more Rotary clubs in the Middle East, we will never have the peace we so desperately seek. You see, this morning, as we meet here in the capacity of this vital club, Rotarians, Catholics, and Protestants are meeting in the same Rotary clubs on the borders of Ulster and Ireland. Hindus and Muslims are meeting together in the same Rotary clubs on the border of India and Pakistan. And throughout the Middle East, Arabs and Jews belonging to the same Rotary clubs are meeting together to talk about Rotary's global thrust in bringing about peace, one Rotarian after another, one person after another, one at a time. Every race, every color, every creed, every religion, every language, every politics, every culture, every ethnic background, every occupation of worthwhile worth, wear the Rotary wheel all over the globe. Princes and heads of state, executives, religious leaders, cultural leaders, social leaders, business leaders, athletic leaders, education leaders, entertainment leaders, people in every walk and profession wear the Rotary wheel. We are a vast, private United Nations doing work on a scale never before undertaken, in the words of one United States Senator, by a private organization and governments to solve people's problems across the globe. You all know what we've done in polio. We're almost done. I've spent 40 years of my life having been on the original polio committee, dealing with a disease that I knew nothing about until I made my first trip to India. And there, they took me to a little village sponsored by a Rotary club. And children in the village came and sang me a song in Punjabi. I sang them a song back in Las Vegas. We didn't understand each other's language, but we understood each other's heart, because music is the universal language. And all these children had no idea how poor and desperate they were. They took my photograph with the kids. They gave me a Maharaja hat, and I felt very important. As I turned to go, one little boy who never made it in the photograph was crawling in the dirt, his legs dangling behind him, not working. I'd never seen this before in my life. This was 35 years ago. I said to my aide, "What's the matter with him?" "He has polio. He'll probably be dead within another year or two because he crawls on the dirt all day, on his elbows, which were bloodied, mosquitoes and all kinds of insects getting into his mouth, which kill people over there on a massive scale every day." He was trying very hard to get to me, and he came and he propped himself up on his elbows right at the base of my feet. And he looked up at me. And my aide whispered in my ear, "Rick, he wanted to be in the photograph." And so I took his photograph. And I've carried it with me every day of my life. You can't see his legs because it was a simple little point and shoot camera that my son Rob had given to me for Father's Day a number of years ago. nowadays, what beautiful cameras we use these days. But I don't think you were supposed to see his legs anyway, because his legs didn't work. And I've carried this photograph with me every day of my life. I took it to work, I took it to church, to the office, to remind myself that this is really what my business is. Paraphrase one great religious leader, no compensation made up for it if we fail, no matter how successful we are in our business, in our occupations, in whatever else we do in life, we fail in the business of humanity. It is the only business we're going to take with us after we leave this life. What we did help others, and in so doing, enrich our own lives, in the words of Albert Schweitzer's second point, becoming the more truly human man, the more truly human woman. We fight AIDS on a massive scale today. We fight malaria and measles and dengue fever. We distribute packets of dehydrated food into the mouths of hungry, starving children all over the third world who would never even dream of the kind of breakfast we enjoyed this morning. We fight illiteracy on a massive scale, the world's largest literacy program funded by Rotary, with a special emphasis on the third world girl child. Just not long ago, the girl child in those countries was ignored. Nobody educated the little girl. All the emphasis was on the little boy. But Rotary changed all that. And our emphasis is on educating little girls. We distribute wheelchairs, and I know some of you have been on wheelchair distributions. This district is doing a major drive this year. Ken Berry is one of the speakers at our district conference in April at the Black Hawk Museum. And this year we're sending containers of wheelchairs across the globe and down to Mexico. And I remember so many times being in places where we put somebody in a wheelchair, what it did for me. Now I've got 2 artificial hips in my legs and an artificial knee, so I don't really dance the way I used to. But I've never needed a wheelchair. And I remember with Chris Lewis, the son of the famed comedian Jerry Lewis, we were in New Jersey at a wheelchair distribution. And I was supposed to be the major speaker. And television cameras were there, and the governor sent somebody from the state offices there, and the newspaper reporters were there, and several hundred people were there to see Rotary distribute wheelchairs to children who needed them. We took a little girl, 4 years old, from her, 6 years old, from her father's arms. She'd been born with spina bifida, and she'd never walked or run in her life. We put her in a new red wheelchair. The room was divided in half. Half the people over here, half the people over here, with a center aisle right down the center. We put her in a wheelchair, Chris Lewis and I, right at the back of the room. And all of a sudden she realized she could move herself by turning the wheel. And up and down the center aisle, she moved her wheelchair, totally oblivious to the fact that a meeting was going on. And pretty soon you could hear a pin drop, because everybody in the room was looking at this little girl moving herself up and down the aisle. I put my speech back in my pocket, because nobody needed a speech then. The speech was right there in front of us. And there wasn't a dry eye in the house. And when we were done with the ceremony, her father came to me with tears streaming down his cheeks. And he said, "Mr. King, thank you for the wheelchair. Every time I carried her by a school playground, my heart broke, because her little brothers, who were there that day also with their mother and their father and their sister, were running and kicking and playing the ball, playing soccer on the schoolyard. And I know she wondered why she couldn't do the same. So you've given a gift not only today to my girl, but to me, and to her mother, and to her brothers. Thank you, Rotary, for the gift." Somebody wrote a check for $75, matched by the Wheelchair Foundation, to put that little girl in a wheelchair. I turned to Paul and I said, "Don't you thank me. I've never needed a wheelchair. My sons have never needed a wheelchair. My wife has never needed a wheelchair. I don't really understand the gift we gave to you, but I tell you this, I will take with me to eternity the gift the look on that little girl's face gave to me. somehow in the process of all of this, we Rotarians become the more truly human man, the more truly human woman. Albert Schweitzer was right. And we do water wells all over the globe. And we restore sight to blind people with cataracts, thousands of them in a weekend in third world countries. We build shelters. We've planted billions and billions of trees in Rotary's campaign to preserve planet Earth. We spend millions on college scholarships and on the Centers for Peace and Conflict Resolution. We fund Interact and Early Act and Rotaract and RILA and Youth Act and the Rotary Youth Exchange Program, the world's largest. All of this is part of Rotary's global thrust, one-on-one, to bring about, in the words of that retired general in the Egyptian army so long ago, a more peaceful world. Rotary's thrust in the 21st century. The beauty of it all is that no matter how much we do, we are the ones who profit the most. That's why I've done it. I made a good living as a trial lawyer. I probably could have made a lot more money if I hadn't spent so much time in Rotary work. I was singing in Las Vegas 3 shows a night under the Howard Hughes hotels. I was being paid well to sing. I probably could have made more money if I'd stayed there and sung some more. But when I was called on my first trip to India, my eyes were awakened. I couldn't understand the poverty. I couldn't understand why so many children died so early in life. I couldn't even understand why they were born in the first place. Because they lived in the streets, hungry, starving, thirsty, diseased, most of them dead by the time they were 5. And one night out on the Pakistan border, pitch black in the room where I was staying, I was so perplexed by all of this. I prayed to my God, why are these children even born? What is their function? What is their purpose? They die so early in life. And it was as if God himself said to me, Rick, don't worry about them. I will take care of them. The point is, you were meant to see them. And the question is, Rick, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? And it changed my life in my early days in Rotary. So I have a friend who passed away last year, a wonderful man, a past district governor, down in Orange County. And he'd been in Rotary about 30 years. And he asked me if I wouldn't fly down to John Wayne Airport on a Thursday morning to speak to his Rotary Club, just like I'm doing today, speaking to you on Thursday at noon. So I agreed to go, and I flew down Thursday morning. This man, like most Rotarians, was a successful person. He had a beautiful big black Mercedes automobile, had a beautiful home in Orange County, had a successful floor covering business, been in Rotary about 30 years, past district governor, good friend of mine. The minute I got into his car, he picked me up at the airport on Thursday morning when I landed. I could tell by the look on his face that he was not his usual self. And I said, Jerry, what's the matter with you today? My wife and I had an emotional experience today, Rick. With our daughter and her new husband, we went to the children's wing of the county hospital to bring home our first grandchild. And I said, congratulations. That's a red letter day in anybody's life. First child, first grandchild, what a way to go. He said, well, it was. It was very emotional because she'd been born 10 days ago on a Sunday. And the doctor told us there was less than a 50-50 chance she could survive. I didn't understand, he said, all of the medical problems. I'm not a doctor. We couldn't even see her for a week. Her mother, my daughter, was in tears the whole week. Her young husband had no idea how to console his wife. My wife, the girl's grandmother, was pretty emotional the whole week. It was not a happy time at my house all last week. But last Sunday, Rick, 1 week after her birth, and this was just 3 or 4 days before the Thursday in which I had arrived, they called us and said, okay, we think we've elevated her to 50-50. If you want to come and see your grandchild, you can come for a few moments today. So we all piled into the car, Rick. You know when you go to a children's wing to see a very sick child at the hospital, and it's your own child, it's not much fun. we went into a room, all whitewashed and clinical, you know, where one patient about this big was lying there, fighting for life, hooked up to a big machine with tubes and wires all over the place. You know how they do, he said. And Carol and I put our arms around each other and we wept. We prayed. He said, Rick, I felt so helpless. I wanted so much to do something to will my grandchild to life. And then he said, Rick, I got the shock of my life. Because there in the corner of the machine was the rotary wheel. I rubbed my eyes, couldn't believe it. And I went over and I stared at it, and underneath there was a little plaque. And it said, this machine was donated by the Rotary Club of Orange. My club, he said. My mind raced back 3 years earlier when the president of the club stood up and said, the children's wing of the county hospital needs a new machine. It isn't going to be cheap, it's going to cost $1 million. But we are Rotarians. We are accustomed to getting things done. We are successful people. And the president said, I think we can do it. So he said, Rick, I wrote a check. I thought I'd set an example. I'm a past district governor, been in Rotary 30 years, and I wrote a check to the hospital fund. Because you know, Rick, Rotary is always asking for a little of our money. And then he said, I sold beer and hot dogs at the club fundraiser at the county fair. Because you know, Rick, Rotary is always asking for a little of our time. And I forgot all about it, he said. I've been in Rotary 3 decades. How many checks? How many projects? How many hot dogs in 30 years? I forgot all about it. Until last Sunday. When that machine was keeping my first grandchild alive. And he broke down and he wept ashamedly on my chest. And he said, Rick, how did we ever get so lucky to belong to a club that's always asking us to give? Because you can't give it away. Sooner or later, one way or another, always and inevitably, it comes back. We become the more truly human man, the more truly human woman. So I commend you for your work. I commend you for your participation. Thank you. The second President of the United States, John Adams, put it this way. Only 2 kinds of people really count in this world, he said. Those people who make commitments and those people who keep them. And we who are privileged to wear the Rotary wheel are obligated to do both. Thank you for your service. God bless you.
I hope you enjoyed that. Any questions for the speaker? We have a proxy answer.
Do we do wheelchairs anymore?
Do we do wheelchairs anymore?
No, through Rotary.
Not through Rotary, yeah. Talk to John for a longer answer. So we are going to reschedule, what was the guy's name? I forget our original speaker, but Gary Gray. Eric Gray. He's going to talk about baseball. So good timing, but bad timing. All right, I'd like to thank Ollie for greeting today, Steve Okamoto for the pledge, Rick Lozini for the 2 thoughts of the day, and who's taking minutes today? Debbie for taking minutes. Next week, we're going to have Henry Ho, who was a MIT classmate of mine. He's going to talk about the MIT Black Death team. which was the inspiration for the movie 20. All right, we are adjourned.